The glittering lights of Hollywood have always promised a version of immortality where the heroes we watch on the silver screen remain forever frozen in their moments of ultimate triumph, strength, and defiance. For decades, global audiences gathered in darkened theaters to witness the archetype of the unbreakable American man, an ordinary individual pushed to extraordinary limits who somehow managed to survive the most impossible catastrophes through sheer willpower and a cynical smirk. This cinematic illusion built an empire of adoration around names that became synonymous with resilience and survival, making it almost impossible for the collective public imagination to separate the actor from the mythic figures he portrayed on celluloid. The world watched as this towering icon of action and charisma defined generations of cinema, embodying a rare combination of raw physical prowess and deep emotional vulnerability that resonated across continents and cultures. Yet behind the velvet curtains and away from the blinding glare of the red carpets lies a quiet, deeply private reality that eventually touches every human life, regardless of fame, fortune, or past glories. The contrast between the public memory of an indestructible protector and the silent struggles of private life forms one of the most poignant narratives of our contemporary cultural landscape, reminding us that the grandest legends are ultimately bound by the fragile laws of human biology. As the years march forward, the stories that truly define these cultural figures shift from the scripted triumphs of a movie set to the unscripted, courageous battles fought within the walls of a family home where the stakes are infinitely higher and there are no second takes. To follow these deeply human journeys is to understand the true nature of strength, which often manifests not in explosive theatrical moments, but in the quiet endurance of those who stand by their loved ones through life's most unpredictable storms. If you wish to stay connected with these profound, real-life stories and explore the deeper narratives behind the famous faces that shaped our world, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel as we continue to bring you comprehensive and thoughtful coverage of the events that touch our hearts. The journey of understanding the trials faced by those who once seemed completely invincible requires us to look past the marquee titles and examine the profound transformation that occurs when the spotlight fades and the cameras stop rolling. For a long time, rumors and quiet whispers filled the corridors of the entertainment industry, hinting at a sudden and unexplained retreat from the active creative life that had defined over 4 decades of unparalleled success. The sudden absence of a familiar face from major projects and public gatherings created a palpable void, leaving millions of admirers wondering what could cause such a definitive departure from the craft that had been his lifelong passion. It is within this atmospheric silence that the true narrative began to form a story not of a fading career, but of a family preparing to confront an invisible and relentless adversary that would test the very fabric of their unity and love. The public only captures fragments of these realities through carefully prepared announcements, but the emotional architecture required to face a progressive neurological condition is built day by day in total privacy, away from the inquisitive eyes of the world. The transition from being a celebrated public figure to entering a chapter of profound vulnerability is a path walked by many. Yet when it happens to an individual who symbolized ultimate capability, it forces a deeper societal reflection on the nature of health, time, and family devotion. This developing story reminds us that beneath the cinematic armor lies a human vulnerability that connects us all, creating a shared empathy that transcends the boundaries of celebrity and fandom. The initial signs of change often appear in the most subtle ways, minor shifts in everyday rhythms and small difficulties that are easily overlooked or attributed to the natural progression of a demanding life spent under constant scrutiny. In the beginning, those closest to the situation noticed variations in communication patterns, moments where the effortless flow of words that had driven so many iconic scripts seemed to encounter a sudden invisible barrier. These early challenges eventually led to an initial medical evaluation that identified a condition known as aphasia, a neurological disorder that primarily impacts an individual's ability to express and understand language effectively. This initial diagnosis served as the public explanation for a formal retirement, marking the end of an era in modern cinema and signaling to the world that a monumental shift was taking place behind closed doors. The news of this retirement sent shockwaves through the global community of film lovers, who had grown up watching this versatile performer navigate everything from intense dramatic narratives to high-octane thrillers with equal grace. Yet as the family wrapped their arms around their patriarch, they soon realized that this initial diagnosis was merely the outer edge of a far more complex and challenging medical landscape that would require even greater resilience to navigate. The courage required to face such an uncertain future is not found in solitary heroism, but in the collective strength of a blended family that chose to meet this challenge with absolute transparency, openness, and a determination to find meaning within the struggle. As the seasons changed and further medical investigations were conducted, the true scope of the conditions began to clarify, revealing a specific diagnosis that would alter their lives forever and redefine their understanding of companionship and care. The revelation of frontotemporal dementia introduced a new vocabulary of grief and adaptation to the family dynamic, presenting a reality where the progressive nature of the illness requires a constant rewiring of emotional expectations and daily routines. This form of dementia, targeting the very areas of the brain responsible for personality, behavior, and language, represents a unique and profound challenge that differs significantly from more widely known cognitive conditions. The family's decision to share this specific truth with the world was driven by a desire to bring awareness to a frequently misunderstood disease, transforming their personal hardship into a beacon of support for countless other families facing similar diagnoses in silence. It is against this backdrop of quiet determination and immense emotional complexity that the primary voices of this journey have emerged, offering rare and deeply moving insights into the daily reality of loving and caring for someone who is physically present but gradually slipping away into a world defined by the boundaries of his illness. The unfolding narrative invites us to look closely at the profound strength exhibited by caregivers who navigate the delicate balance of honoring the past while entirely accepting the altered reality of the present moment. Through this lens, we begin to see the true portrait of a family bound not by the superficial glamour of their public lives, but by an enduring commitment to protect the dignity and peace of the man who gave so much of his spirit to the world. The delicate veil of absolute privacy was lifted even further when Heming Willis chose to share the profound and deeply personal internal realities of her family's daily existence during a moving and candid appearance on a recent episode of a prominent podcast series. Speaking with a raw and unflinching honesty that resonated deeply with millions of listeners worldwide, she dismantled the sterile clinical definitions often found in medical textbooks to expose the throbbing emotional pulse of a household forced to completely redefine the concept of companionship in the shadow of a progressive neurological condition. Frontotemporal dementia, commonly referred to by its acronym FTD, is not a singular or uniform experience, but rather a complex, multi-layered disorder that aggressively targets the frontal and temporal lobes of the human brain, which are the precise areas responsible for the very essence of human expression, personality, behavioral control, and emotional regulation. For a global audience that had spent decades accustomed to seeing the legendary action icon command every room with his boom-zing vocal presence, physical dominance, and quick-witted dialogue, the revelation that his specific variant primarily strikes at the faculty of language introduces a particularly cruel and poignant irony to the situation. The ability to effortlessly articulate complex thoughts, to share spontaneous jokes, and to connect deeply through the natural flow of spoken language is gradually replaced by an invisible, impenetrable barrier that requires those who love him most to learn an entirely new vocabulary based on presence, intuition, and silent touch. This slow erosion of communication does not occur overnight in a sudden dramatic shift. Rather, it unfolds as a gradual, agonizing process of subtraction that forces a primary caregiver to witness the steady alteration of the landscape of their shared life day by day, creating a continuous state of emotional adaptation that tests the absolute limits of human endurance, marital devotion, and psychological strength. One of the most exhausting and significant challenges in dealing with this condition under the relentless glare of public scrutiny is the constant necessity of confronting the massive wave of public misunderstanding that continuously surrounds the broad term of dementia. Emma addressed what she described as a very common and deeply frustrating misconception that automatically equates any form of cognitive decline with total memory loss, explaining that the global public almost universally assumes a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease whenever they hear the word dementia used in conversation. With meticulous care and a profound desire to educate the broader public, she clarified that Alzheimer's disease and frontotemporal dementia attack entirely different anatomical regions of the human brain, resulting in vastly different daily realities, behavioral patterns, and cognitive challenges for the patients and their caregiving families. When well-meaning individuals and concerned fans ask the painful and repetitive question of whether the iconic star still recognizes his family members, the answer remains a definitive and comforting yes. Because his memory structures are distinct from the specific language-focused areas currently compromised by his neurological condition. FTD manifests in 3 distinct and highly specialized variants, each targeting a specific neurological domain within the patient. One variant profoundly alters human behavior and impulse control, another severely impacts physical movement, balance, and motor skills, and the specific variant currently confronting their family focuses its devastating effects almost entirely on language, comprehension, and verbal communication. Navigating these complex medical distinctions publicly requires an immense amount of emotional fortitude, as the family must constantly correct the surrounding public narrative while simultaneously managing the escalating daily physical demands of a disease that refuses to pause or retreat, ensuring that the true nature of his struggle is respected, honored, and understood by a world looking on with a mixture of intense curiosity and profound sympathy. The emotional architecture of this long and exhausting journey is perhaps best captured by a profound psychological concept that Emma highlighted during our candid conversation, specifically referencing the pioneering academic work of specialized researchers who coined the deeply resonant term known as ambiguous loss. This specific psychological and emotional state describes the excruciating, ongoing reality of having to grieve someone who is still physically alive, creating a paradoxical and deeply confusing universe where dedicated caregivers find themselves mourning a person who remains standing or sitting right in front of them every single day. In the tragic context of a progressive cognitive illness, the individual is physically present in the room, breathing, maintaining physical form, and looking out into the world, yet the specific mental, intellectual, and emotional connections that once formed the absolute bedrock of the relationship are shifting, fading, and dissipating into the unpredictable fog of the underlying disease. Emma admitted with a heartbreaking sincerity that she finds herself existing consistently in a state of grief, a continuous, unchanging cycle of mourning that does not offer the definitive finality or closure of a traditional bereavement, but instead demands that she confront and grieve different layers of personal subtraction and loss every single week. This type of neurological illness is a completely relentless thief that takes and takes without permission, sometimes proceeding with an agonizingly slow pace that stretches out the suffering. Stealing a specific unique gesture one month, a familiar look of understanding the next, and forcing the entire family structure to constantly navigate a complex landscape of perpetual, living farewells while still trying to find the internal courage to provide love, comfort, safety, and absolute stability in the current present moment. To effectively manage this overwhelming emotional and physical burden over the long term, the tight-knit family was forced to make deeply difficult, pragmatic logistical decisions that accurately reflect the severe and exhausting reality of advanced neurological caregiving. The Hollywood star now resides in a completely separate residence, supported around the clock by a highly specialized, full-time professional care team equipped to safely handle the complex, minute-by-minute physical and medical demands of his evolving condition. This specific living arrangement allows his devoted wife and their 2 young daughters, Mabel and Evelyn, to maintain a vital semblance of routine, structure, and emotional stability in their own developing lives, while simultaneously ensuring that their father receives the absolute highest level of specialized attention, safety protocols, and comfort required for his dignity and well-being. The intricate web of daily support extends far beyond a single household or marital bond, drawing in a remarkably cohesive and fiercely protective blended family unit that includes his former wife, Demi Moore, and their 3 adult daughters, Rumor, Scout, and Tallulah, who have unified completely without hesitation to form an unbreakable circle of protection, care, and unconditional love around their patriarch. The delicate tension between preserving the sacred, innocent space of childhood for the younger daughters while openly confronting the stark, undeniable reality of their father's progressive condition requires Emma to operate simultaneously as a fierce protector of her children's emotional environments and the primary administrative and emotional anchor for her husband's ongoing care edgy. This highly complex, multi-layered family dynamic underscores the true heavy weight of the situation, where multiple generations of a single family must learn to coexist with a devastating and unpredictable illness. carefully balancing their individual private heartbreaks with a collective, unyielding determination to ensure that his remaining years are filled with absolute dignity, profound peace, and the unwavering certainty of their deep devotion. The profound depths of this ongoing medical odyssey are further layered by a unique psychological phenomenon that provides both comfort and a heartbreaking sense of distance for those who walk this path alongside him. Within the intricate and challenging terrain of frontotemporal dementia, physicians and specialists frequently encounter a specific neurological condition known as anosognosia, a state of profound unawareness where the damaged brain completely loses the capacity to recognize, identify, or comprehend its own underlying health conditions or cognitive deficits. For the celebrated Hollywood action star, this means he exists in a universe where he is fundamentally unable to connect the dots regarding his own diagnosis, remaining beautifully and completely unaware of the progressive illness that has altered the trajectory of his life and career. Emma has openly discussed this specific aspect of his condition, describing it with a deeply moving clarity as both an immense blessing and a profound curse wrapped into a single, incomprehensible reality. It is an extraordinary blessing because it completely spares him from the existential terror, frustration, and deep psychological suffering that typically accompanies the conscious awareness of a terminal, degenerative decline, allowing him to live his days with a certain undisturbed tranquility, believing that his current state of being is simply his normal everyday reality. Yet for his devoted family members and caregivers who must watch this unfold, it remains a heavy emotional curse, as they are left to carry the entire, crushing weight of the diagnosis alone, mourning the profound changes in their loved one while he remains entirely insulated from the heartbreaking truth of his own condition by the very nature of his neurological injury. This shared journey of survival, adaptation, and unconditional love has also catalyzed a powerful, transformative mission that extends far beyond the quiet walls of their private family residence, as Emma has actively sought to channel her profound personal grief into a broad, impactful movement of global advocacy, public education, and caregiver support. Recognizing the extreme isolation and overwhelming despair that so often paralyzes the families of those diagnosed with rare cognitive disorders, she authored and published a deeply personal and practical book titled The Unexpected Journey: Finding Strength, Hope, and Yourself on the Caregiving Path, which serves as an essential, compassionate guide for individuals navigating the often dark and chaotic waters of dementia caregiving. Through her written words and public speaking engagements, she continuously emphasizes the vital, non-negotiable importance of self-care, urging primary caregivers to actively protect and nurture their own physical, mental, and emotional well-being even as they devote their lives to the absolute comfort and safety of an ailing loved one. Furthermore, she established a dedicated philanthropic initiative known as the Emma and Bruce Willis Fund, a targeted foundation that works tirelessly to confront frontotemporal dementia on a global scale by raising critical public awareness, securing necessary funding for vital early-stage medical research, and establishing robust, easily accessible support networks for caregivers who often feel completely forgotten by society. By stepping courageously into the public eye as a vocal advocate, she has successfully transformed an intensely painful personal tragedy into an enduring beacon of hope, community solidarity, and practical empowerment for countless families worldwide who are quietly fighting the exact same battles in the shadows of anonymity. The profound impact of this devastating illness has also revealed unexpected, deeply moving silver linings within the intricate fabric of the extended blended family, illustrating how unconditional devotion can uncover hidden landscapes of beauty even within the darkest seasons of human life. The actor's eldest daughter, Heming Willis, has shared remarkably tender insights into the evolving nature of her relationship with her father, expressing an immense, tearful gratitude for the opportunity to witness and experience a completely different, hitherto unseen dimension of his multi-layered personality in the post-diagnosis chapter of his life. For a global audience that always perceived him as the ultimate archetype of the stoic, masculine, and completely indestructible Hollywood alpha male, her descriptions of his current disposition introduce a deeply touching and profoundly fragile perspective. She has noted that a beautiful childlike sweetness and an extraordinarily delicate tenderness have blossomed within him, a gentle vulnerability that the heavy, demanding mantle of being a global cinematic icon might never have fully permitted him to express or explore during his decades of intense, high-profile public stardom. This profound shift became even more poignant following the arrival of his beautiful granddaughter, Louetta, allowing 3 generations of the family to connect through a silent, instinctual language of pure, unadulterated affection that completely transcends the rigid boundaries of spoken words, memory, or intellectual comprehension. These intimate, sacred moments of family connection serve as a powerful, living reminder that while the progressive disease may successfully diminish an individual's cognitive faculties and linguistic abilities, it remains completely powerless to extinguish the core essence of human warmth, the deep-seated capacity for emotional connection, and the enduring purity of familial love. Ultimately, the collective story of this remarkably unified family stands as a towering, profoundly inspiring testament to the true meaning of resilience, dignity, and grace under the most difficult circumstances imaginable. Their courageous decision to pull back the curtain on a cruel, deeply misunderstood disease has not only brought much-needed global attention to the urgent realities of frontotemporal dementia, but it has also completely redefined the public's understanding of what it truly means to be a hero in the modern world. The legendary action star who once commanded the imagination of millions by surviving explosive, fictional catastrophes on movie screens across the globe is now teaching humanity his most profound, enduring lesson yet, delivered not through scripted dialogue or cinematic bravado, but through the quiet, dignified vulnerability of his everyday presence and the fierce, unyielding devotion of the family that stands as an impenetrable fortress around him. As they continue to navigate this long, unpredictable, and emotionally exhausting path of ambiguous loss, they remind us all that the true measure of a life well lived is found not in the fleeting glamour of fame, fortune, or worldly accolades, but in the absolute depth of the love we leave behind and the unbreakable strength of the bonds that sustain us through our most vulnerable moments. Their journey is a beautiful, heart-wrenching portrait of human endurance, a powerful message to the world that even when the bright lights of Hollywood fade into absolute silence, the light of unconditional love